Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to speak about tonight and then for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the halachas for Purim. But really tonight, we're going to speak about what comes before Purim. There are some halachas that are relevant to the month of Adar. So we're going to talk about those, what happens in Adar, the different parshas that we read over um, the Shabbases that are in Adar until we get to Nisan. And then we're going to talk about the fast of Esther, some of the tiniest Esther, some of the halachas about that. And then right before Purim, there's also this this thing we do, Zecher Machzit Shekel, something we do to remember the Machzit Shekel, which is nice that we'll speak about this week because we're reading the parsha of Kititha, where that's where the Machzit Shekel is mentioned, and then we'll see how much we're able to cover tonight. But after that, we'll start to actually get into the halachas that of Purim itself. We'll talk about the days of Purim, which day should you celebrate Purim, and also the different mitzvahs that happen on Purim. Um, that'll probably be next week already. But we'll see what we can cover in the amount of time that we have, and whatever we don't do this week, we'll continue next week. So part one, right? Talk about the month of Adar. So the Gemara in Tainus says that when Adar comes, when we get to the month of Adar, we increase our happiness. Mishenichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. So since this month is a month that's filled with um, happiness and good mazel, good luck, good fortune for the Jews. The Gemara says if you have to go to court against a non-Jew, the best time to do that is in the month of Adar. So prolong all your court cases and uh, and make sure you do them in Adar. And this year we have 2 months of Adar. So there's there's debate about if you say that in both others, but I think we basically say yeah that we get double the amount of Mishnech Masada Marvin with Simcha this year. But anyways, once the month of Adar comes, um this year Adar Bays, we start reading the Dalit Parshios, the four Parshios. What are these Dalit Parshios? Well, Chazal they decreed to read these four parshas, the Dalit Parshios, on the Shabbases during the month of Adar. So they are Parsha of Shkalim, Zachor, Para, and Hachodesh. And those are extra portions of the Torah that we read as a maftir. Um, we both the different reasons why we read them and different times in Adar that we say them. Now during a leap year, which is what we have this year, we read these in Adar Sheni. What happens if you accidentally read them in Adar Aleph? Um, like let's say you read it this week, and then you would have to read them again in Adar Sheni. There's also this a custom. I don't know if the yeshiva has this minhag um, to read Yotzros during Shachris and Musa during Shkalim and Chodesh, and during the weeks of Zachor and Para to read the Yotzros during Shachris. Is that the minhag of the yeshiva?
No, not our custom.
Okay, so it's not the minhag of the yeshiva, so we will not be doing it in the yeshiva. Um, and then the Aruch HaShulchan, he says that since these Shabbos are filled with so much joy during the month of Adar, we don't mention the various people who passed away. Um, there's machlokas whether we say Abarachim, and Abarachim is a little bit of a sadder prayer, mentioning people who died. So there's a machlokas whether we say it during the Shabbos. I think most people pass him, and yes, we do say them. Please we'll look in the Luach what it says. So we'll start with number one. First one that we read is Shkalim. Why do we read Shkalim? What's Shkalim about? So we read it as a zecher to remember the mitzvah of Machzit Shekel. What's Machzit Shekel? So that's this week's parsha that it used to be that every man over 20 years old in Bnei Israel was obligated to give a half shekel to the Beis Hamikdash in order to purchase the korbanos for the korban tamid that they would have to bring every day. And so they would take this collection of money during the month of Adar. Why during the month of Adar did they collect um, for the korbanos, you could have done an extra in any month. So the the Chazal, they learn from the pasuk. Pasuk says, "Zos olas chodesh bechodsho lechodshei hashana." Okay, there's a lot of chodesh, chodshei, chodshei. Yeah, so what's going on there? So the Chazal say, chodesh means month. So Chazal says that one of these times that it says chodesh bechodshei lechodshei is extra. They teach us that there's an extra month, that which means that there's a month that needs to be sort of made new. That you have to make this month and turn it into something chadash, to something new, by bringing an ola and a tamid, basically korbanos and musaf from a new truma, um, from a new collection of money. And so the Gemara learns that this month is Nisan. So that means that during the month of Nisan, based on this chazal, we need to take we need to take new truma that has just been collected, and use that to acquire karbanos. So therefore, it makes sense that when are we going to collect all this money for the new truma? We're going to do that in the month of Adar, and so that's why they did it at this time. So we read the Parsha of Shkalim. When we read it, we read it to remember that, and also, um, when we read the Psukim, it's sort of as if we're doing it. We're almost in a way doing it. That's what Pasuk says in Neshama pardons saying that by uttering these words, in a way we're doing it as well. So that's why we read it, to remember it, and to sort of do it as well. So when do we read it? It's read the Shabbos prior to Rosh Chodesh Adar. So what Shabbos would that be this year? I think that's gonna be the Shabbos of, I think Rosh Chodesh is
Next
is on.
Shabbos is the Shabbos prior to Rosh Chodesh Adar.
Okay, so yeah, so Rosh Chodesh is on March 10th, March 11th. So next Shabbos we're gonna read Shkalim. That's number one. That's the first part that we read. Good. Any questions? Okay, good. So we'll go to the next one. Next one is Zachor. That's probably the most famous one. Why do we read Zachor? Zachor is read in order to remember the actions of Amalek, what they did to us in the Midbar, and we read that right before we read the Megillah, right before we read about Haman, who was from Amalek. So we read Zachor, the Shabbos, right before Purim. That's going to be the, you'll look in the calendar, you'll see where that is in this week. It's the Shabbos right before Purim. It's also, we read it in order to do to remember or the erasing of Amalek. So it's a little bit interesting that we specifically read it to remember that we have to wipe out Amalek. But that's why we do it. Some hold that this is so important that reading Zachor or listening to Zachor is a biblical obligation. It's a deraisa. And since it's deraisa, there are more strict laws than the other parshas that we're reading during month of Adar. So, for example, it should be read from the Torah. The person who's laning should make sure to have kavana, and also the listeners have kavana. Um, Most hold it needs to be said in a minyan. Um, Also, some people are very careful about how they pronounce the words, and they'll make sure to repeat words that can kind of go either way. Like if you have like the classic one is zecher and zecher, that to debate how you pronounce that vowel under the zayin. So most people read it at least two times, so you can make sure to say it both ways. There's also debate if women are obligated in listening to Zachar. Um, Sefer Achinuch, he writes that women are not obligated to hear Zachar since only men fought in the battle. That women didn't fight in the battle, so they do not have to hear Zachar. The Minchas Chinuch, he comments on the Sefer Achinuch. Sefer Achinuch is a sefer that lists all the mitzvahs. He goes through all the mitzvahs and he says, this is the mitzvah, these are the laws of the mitzvahs, and this is why the mitzvah is a mitzvah. So the Minchas Chinuch, he comments on the Sefer Chinuch. Um, that's what his Sefer is, but he questions the Sefer Chinuch. He says, I don't understand. How could you tell me that women are not obligated in listening to Zachar? First of all, we know the rule that women are only non-obligated. Women are women are obligated and not obligated. Wait, sorry. It's a mitzvah say shazman grama. So I guess that would be a reason why women are not obligated. But I'm not sure what
Why
is
is
that.
it man? Why is it man grammar?
Yeah, that's what I meant. That it's mitzvah say shalom is man grama. That this is not a time bound. But it is a time bound mitzvah because you only listen to it during the week of Zafar. So maybe that's why that would explain the Sefer,
No, no. I'm saying it never says to do it just that week. It's a mitzvah the whole year. Simchat Zecher Amalek, not any specific time.
Okay, so that I guess that's his argument that it's not really a time bound mitzvah. But although you could argue it is, but you don't. I guess if you could do it any time, right? 'Cause the pasuk doesn't tell us to do specifically in this time. That just happens to be when we read it. So it's not actually a time bound mitzvah. Um, he also he also says that women are obligated in not remembering, sorry, in not forgetting that the lo tishkach. So women are obligated in that. I was also wondering that the reason why the Sefer Chinuch says they're not obligated is because only men fought in the battle. But um, I think the the Chazal, I think they tell us that Amalek specifically attacked the weak members of Klal Yisrael, who were the women and children. So even though they didn't fight in the battle, they're very much a part of why we need to remember this. So that could be a question on the Sefer Chinuch. Regardless, most people hold Minchas Yitzchak. He writes that the minhag very much is for women to go to shul and to hear Zachor, whether or not they are obligated or not. You should that's up for debate. But the very the very strong minhag in Klal Yisrael is for women to go to shul and hear Zachor. That's number two. Now we move on to the third parsha that we read is the parsha of Para. When we read that, it's Shabbos right before we read Parsha, the one of the Chodesh, fourth one of the Chodesh. So we read Para, whenever we read a Chodesh, we read Para, the Shabbos before. Why do we read that? Well, in the Midbar, they used to burn the Para Duma right before Nisan, so they could sprinkle the ashes on Bnei Israel, on different members of Bnei Israel who become Tameh, they become impure. And so we would sprinkle the ashes of the Paraduma, the red heifer, to make them tahor, to make them clean, ritually pure, so that they're able to eat the korban pesach. Because you can't eat the korban pesach if you're not tahor, if you're not pure. So they would make sure to do that right before they would make sure to do that before Nisan. So we read this parsha in a way as sort of this tefillah to God, to Kadosh Baruch Hu, that He should also, in a way, sprinkle the ashes of the red heifer on us to make us tahor, so that we should be able to slaughter the korban pesach, eat the korban pesach, and be tahor for it. There are those who say that this is a biblical obligation to hear para. Most people hold that it's not a biblical obligation; it's a rabbinical obligation. Finally, the last parsha that we read is the parsha of Chodesh. We read this the Shabbos right before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the reason why we do this is to be Mekadesh, to sanctify the month of Nisan, because the pasuk says specifically about Nisan, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodesh, and that this month to you should be the first of your month. So there's we specifically want to be Mekadesh, to sanctify this month out of all months. It's also the first mitzvah that we got as the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, and that was on the month of Nisan. So we read it right before Nisan. And even though this for sure can't be the main Kiddush HaChodesh, it can't be the main way that they used to sanctify the month with Eidim, with witnesses. Um, that's also done. That's done when the moon comes out, but we still do it as sort of a remembrance or a way to do it a different way. Very interesting. I'll just share that I heard very recently in a share from Rav Schechter. He said in the name of Soloveitchik that he explained how come if we ever did Kiddush Levana, if we stay Motzei Shabbos on once a month, we we sanctify the new moon. So it's very strange prayers that we say. We say different phrases. It's a little bit weird. And one of the phrases that we say is David, David Melch Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. We say that three times, and then also we turn to a neighbor, say Shalom Aleichem to one person, Shalom Aleichem to another person, Shalom Aleichem to another person. They respond Aleichem Shalom. So it's, what's going on? Um, so he didn't explain all of it, but he explained some of it. He just happened to mention that sometimes Rav Shechter does that in the middle of a shir. So he happened to mention this from Soloveitchik that what we're doing when we say Kiddush Savana is sort of a remembrance of how they used to sanctify the new month. Like sort of how we're doing when we read the Parsha of Chodesh. So what when we look so they used to require that these witnesses they would see the moon, and then they would go to Beis Din and tell them they saw the moon, and then Beis Din would say, okay, so we're gonna say it's a new month. So that used to be how it's done. Of course, now we have calendars. Now we know exactly when the new month starts. But that's how the process used to be done. So we're in a way doing that when we say Kiddush Savana. So what do we do? First, we look at the moon, say the bracha, um, and then we're sanctifying the month. But it used to be that during the times of Beis Din, when they used to do this, there was a group of people, the Tzaddukim, um, they were people who tried to basically mess up the Jews. They believe in the oral law, um, only the biblical, only the written Torah, not in the oral Torah. And they would try to get in Beis Din's way. They would try to mess up the the court of the Jewish court. So they would come in and try to mess up the month. And the court was Beis Din. They were not very happy with it. So what they decided is to make sure that they didn't have a problem with these Sadukim, these people who messed everyone up. They invented a secret code. Sir Sheffer said that they invented a secret code to know that when the Adim came, when the witness came, that this guy was going to be a a guy who believes in the oral law too, a guy who we can trust. So what was the secret code? So the guy had to say, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Chaim three times. He said David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Chaim three times. Okay, we knew this guy was it's a kosher guy, and we can accept his testimony, and he probably really did see the moon, and probably it's really a new month. And so once they accepted the guy as a kosher aid, that he's a kosher witness. So each of the judges, there three judges, they would all say Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, meaning in a way we're ready to accept your aidus, we accept your testimony. But that's just a tangent, but I thought it was very nice to share because I don't. Otherwise, you don't really know what you're doing when you get to Motzei Shabbos and you're saying all these strange things and looking at a moon. But what happens if we say Hachodesh the Shabbos right before the month of Nisan? What if Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos? So then we read Hachodesh on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh. Okay, those the four parshas that we say during the month of Adar. Any questions on those? Okay, so let's keep going. Next, we'll talk about the fast of Esther, Tainus Esther. Tainus means fast, Esther is Esther. So the minhag is to fast on Yod Gimel, the 13th of Adar, and the fast is called Tainus Esther. So I always thought the reason it's called Tainus Esther is because Esther fasted. So to remember that Esther fasted, we fast too. That may be true, but the Mishnah Berurah comments on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, which means like daily laws. So Mishnah Berurah, he comments in the Halachas of Purim. He explains the reason why we fast as follows. He says, "Ki b'mei Mordechai v'Esther, in the days of Mordechai and Esther, nikalu b'yom yigimel b'adar l'hilachem l'mod al nasham." So what happened was is that the Jews they gathered up to fight for their life. ויצריכים לבקש רחמים ותחנונים שיעזרים Hashem linakim me'ovehem. So what did they need to do? They required asking Hashem and davening to Hashem that Hashem would help them to defeat their enemies. Umatzinu, we find kishayu biyom milchama shayu misanim that they would fast. That shekin amru Chazal shemoshe Rabbeinu alav shalom biyom shemilcham Amalek hayam misanim. That you find that Moshe Rabbeinu on the day that he fought against Amalek during the times of the Jews in the Midbar, um, that that he 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 also fasted. V'im kain, if that's true, b'vadai gam b'mei Mordechai hayu mitanim be'oso yom. So for sure, during the days of Mordechai and Esther, they also for sure fasted on this day. V'lachein, and therefore nagu kol Yisrael litanus b'yavim v'adar. So therefore, we took upon ourselves the custom to also fast on the 13th of Adar, the Nikra Tiny Esther. So why is it called Tiny Esther, the fast of Esther? Kedei litzkor she'Hashem yisbarach ro'eh v'shomea kol ish be'is taraso. To It's called the fast of Esther to remember that Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he sees and he hears every single person in the time of need. Be'is taraso kasher yis'aneh, when he cries out, "V'yashuv el Hashem b'chol levavo," with all his heart, "Kemosha aseh b'mimahim," like they did in those days. So it's not because Esther fasted. Rather, it was because it was a time of great need, and they called out to Hashem. It must be they fasted during those days. So we fast too, just to remind ourselves that anytime we need a Kadosh Baruch Hu's help, that at the time of great need, Hashem's going to answer our prayers just like he answered them. My father pointed out that Esther actually fasted on Pesach, not on Yud Gimel Adar, not during Purim. So it really is this misnomer that we're fasting because Esther fasted. Okay, so we're supposed to fast anyways on Yud Gimel, the 13th of Adar. So what happens if that falls out on Shabbos, which is actually what happens this year, that the 13th of Adar falls out on Shabbos. But usually we don't fast on Shabbos, so we move the fast to Thursday because we don't make a fast for Shabbos, and we also don't make a fast for Friday. We think that the next logical place to go, if we're not fasting on Shabbos, we should at least fast on Friday. Well, we don't make a fast for Friday. And the Mishnah Brura writes that we don't fast on Friday because on a fast we say a lot of different slichos, and on Erev Shabbos you need to do a lot to prepare for Shabbos. So we don't want to. It's very hard if you're busy saying slichos all day, you're davening all day, you're not going to be able to prepare for Shabbos. Let's say you get to you get to shul Thursday night, you're davening Marv, and they say, "Hey, how was your fast?" And you say, "What fast?" You say, "Time Esther." You say, "Oh, I thought that was the day before Purim." So you forgot to fast. So what do you do? So if that's the case, then you should fast on Friday, even though it's Friday. And we don't usually fast on Friday, but if you forgot, um, you, you're not off the hook. You still have to fast Friday. That's what they say. As the Mishnah Berurah says, who doesn't need a fast? So the the halacha is if you're pregnant, if you just gave birth, if you're nursing, you don't need a fast. But some say it's only if you're in pain, because you great pain if you fast. In YU, Rabbi Willig, Rosh Shiva, one of Rosh Shivas in YU, he has a famous opinion that he holds that 2 years after you give birth, you don't need to fast the minor fast. Um, um, but of course, whenever dealing with this, you should talk to your rabbi. The Ramah says that anyone who's sick, a chola she'imbo sakana, that's an important term. That's someone who's sick, but he's not dangerous. He's not in danger of dying because of this sickness, but he's still sick. So the Ramah says that since it's a minor fast, you don't need to fast. You don't need to fast because of that. But the Ramah does say that so that's what most people know, that if you're sick or cholesh, even if you're not danger from this sickness, you don't need a fast. But the Ramah continues and says, although you don't need a fast, you still have to make up the fast. Um, the Mishnah Berurah says that may just mean people who are sick, but a pregnant or a nursing lady may not need to even make up the fast. If someone is making a bris milah, there may be a leniency not to fast. But if that's the case, then you should talk to someone who can answer the questions about that. And then finally, the last thing before Purim that we do is we do this thing, Zecher L'Machzit HaShekel. We do this thing to remember the Machzit HaShekel, which is the Parsha Shkalim that we were reading. That our minhag is to give tzedakah as a Zecher to remember the Machzit HaShekel, the half shekel that was brought during Adar. And some have the custom to give it in the morning before you read the Megillah. Most people give it before Purim, for Mincha. There's debate about what type of currency is required to form this Zecher, but um, you should just do whatever they usually in I assume in the yeshiva they'll have it out. They'll have it set out, whatever money it is. And just you follow instructions, you a piece of paper that tells you to pick it up, put it down, give it 20, whatever it is. You just follow everyone has a little bit of a different minhag of what they do. Follow whatever it has in the yeshiva, in the shul, wherever you are. Um, the next section I think we'll leave for next time. So if anyone has any questions, we'll stop here.